الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف حالكم جميعا يا أيها الإخوة والأخوات؟ وقد نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى علما نافع ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا آمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for none other than beneficial knowledge, and we ask him for halal wholesome provision, and we ask him for actions which are accepted. Ameen. وقد سئل الشيخ العلامة Sheikh Ibn Baz rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi. Indeed, the former Mufti Sheikh Abdullah ibn Baz rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, who was known as Sheikh al-Islam in our time, as well as Al-Allama, he was asked the question pertaining to Hal al-Aslu fil Zawaj al-Wahida. Hal al-Aslu fil Zawaj Wahida. التأدب جاء أعراض للأسباب أم هي يعني عكس. So he was asked the question pertaining to whether or not the origin of marriage, was it polygyny or was it to marry only one woman? He was asked specifically, and I know, redundant topic, a situation that talks morally. The men, they cheer and they champion on the concept of ta'addud because it seems as if it benefits them. So it seems like there's a lot of redundancy, right? Why do the men, when they talk about Islam, they talk about polygyny? Why do they talk about things that benefits them? Right? Yes, and there's a lot of components to polygyny being established. And in order for it to be established, we already know that there's a lot, and Islam covers that extensively. And we're not going to dismiss all of those different components as well. But we will address the issue. The Shaykh responded by saying that ta'addu huwa asl. So Shaykh Ibn Baz, he says that the origin of marriage is polygyny. He says, وَوَاحِدَةُ هِيَ الَّتِي يَحْصَلُ بِهَا أَجَزْ. He says that taking one wife really occurs when there is an inability on behalf of the man to distribute justice between the wives. All right? Because the issue was pertaining to the orphans. Okay? So if the man wanted to marry the orphan, so to speak, and he didn't have what it takes to marry the orphan, then Allah Jalla wa Ala allows him to choose according to his liking those who please him, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ, from the woman, and then Allah Jalla wa Ala starts from the two. So Sheikh Ibn Baz, he is saying that the one is mentioned in this verse only when there is incapability on behalf of distributing justice. And so he continues. He says, لِأَنَّ اللَّهَ جَلَّ وَعَلَى قَالَ, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ فَإِن كِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةٌ Al-Ayat fi Surah An-Nisa. So Allah Jalla wa Ala, he says, if you fear, meaning in other words, if you know, all right, as is mentioned in the tafsir, if you know that you will not be able to deal justice between the orphans, then marry women to your liking, those whom you choose from the woman. I need 2, 3, or 4. And if you know and fear that you will not be able to deal justice between the wives, then only take one. So Shaykh Ibn Baz, he comments, he says, Fadala ala, he says that this verse indicates to us as what? Fadala ala asl huwa ta'addud, that the origin of marriage is polygyny. Right? This is what he said, right? He says because the origin of marriage is polygyny. That's what it indicates, right? يتزوج الثنتين أو ثلاثة أربعة لأن هذا أقرب إلى إعفاف الرجل وإلى كثرة النسل فإذا أجز اكتفى بواحدة. Right? in khafa alla ya'dil. So he goes on to continue in his statement. He says in his answer, he says that because this is more closer to what's being stated in the actual text. This is more closer to the man in terms of having, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, being numerous from his ummah by having more children, actually, as you're saying, procreating more from amongst his ummah, that he made dua that he hoped that my ummah will be the largest, that have more children procreate. And this is only achieved through polygyny, okay, through ta'addud. One wife can't, alhamdulillah, you can have 6, 7 kids, or some woman have the ability to have 12 kids, back when our grandma and stuff like that, but it's not normally the norm. So having more than one wife, you get multiple kids, right? So something that can be help procreate. So he says, he says, but if the man is unable to do the condition or fulfill the condition which in the verse, then one would be right for this individual. Marrying one wife will be correct for this individual. This is Sheikh Ibn Baz commentary on the verse. All right, we're going to look at 2 other scholars' commentary on this particular verse. However, I just wanted to point out to you guys, I know it seemed like a redundant thing, and I know in this time and age, with women outnumbering men, polygyny will be the ideal thing, but without the components and certain things needing to be there, such as finance, which is a big one, such as education, tarbiyah, cultivation, such as a person's religious commitment, their practice to their deen, everything that is required for marriage to take place, period, whether it is monogamy, will be the same thing that it takes place with polygyny, right? Now, it's inevitable. A man is going to want to sate himself, and as we should see, especially what even Sa'idi is going to say about this issue. So many men, and it got nothing to do with, oh, you just want to get married to have sex. Right? Sex plays a part of any marriage. But that shouldn't be the purpose or the goal or the ghaya just for a person to get married just for sex, because he's going to miss out on everything else. And Islam holds everyone responsible. So when you have today's society, if you look at the relationships that's going on now, you'll find that a person will either be in a relationship, they here and there, then they got their highs and their lows. Soon as something don't go right, then the individual steps out, he finds something else in some other woman that he couldn't find in the woman he have. He doesn't leave that particular woman, but he keeps her, and at the same time goes for the other one, right? And then you find himself dealing with 2 women, right? And this normally happens for some time because he actually likes certain traits of the other woman, and that would have happened. But in Islam, it allows the person to be responsible, because now if he stepped outside of that one relationship and not marry the other one, but grab the other one, he can use the card that I have no obligations towards you because we aren't married, right? And that's oppression. That's a dhulm to that particular female. That's dhulm, and that's dhulm to the woman that he's with. So Islam makes it charge. Men cannot marry no more, exceeding or going beyond up to 4 women, okay? And this is something that we need to take a look at. Imam Sa'di, rahimahullah, comment on this exact same verse, right? He says about it, and it's interesting enough what he's going to say. He says specifically about this verse, meaning that if you fear that you can't be equal between the orphan woman, those who are under your pretty much under your shelter, under your guardianship, if you fear that you cannot establish their rights, and avoid actually loving them, then it is best for you to turn to other than them. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, marry those whom you choose or select from the women. Meaning, مَا وَقَعَ عَلَيْهِمْ اِقْتِيَارِكُمْ, meaning those whom you select from amongst them. Right? Those who have deen. And now he talks about some of the qualities you should look for when you select these women. Right? Those who possess deen. Those who might possess wealth. Those who possess beauty. All right? And those who possess good lineage. All right? And those who have good employment, like they have good stock, right? He says, and other than the reasons which are mentioned that a person may marry, or other than those reasons for which a man may marry a woman, فَاقْتَرُوا عَلَى نَظُرِكُمْ, meaning marry according to that what you see from those women. Those qualities are there. And he says, no doubt the best of those whom you want to choose is those who have the quality of deen, just as the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, you marry women, or women are married for 4 reasons, like he said, for her wealth, for her beauty, for her lineage, and for her deen. فَظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ talk about the yamin. We know what the Prophet was telling yamin, that if you do not choose the one with your deen, then make your hand be covered in dust. He says, وَفِي هذه الآية أنه ينبغي للإنسان أن يختار قبل النكاح. He says, so one thing we know that is befitting for the person before marriage to choose. All right, he should choose the person before he actually marry that individual. بل وقد أباها له شارع نظر إلى من يريد تزوجها. He said also in the legislation it has been made permissible for him to seek a look to see whether or not he's attracted, to see if there's attraction there between him and the woman he would like to marry. So he gets the permissible look to make sure, all right, as we have many narrations on that. So he said it's permissible in the deen for that to take place, right? ليكون على بصيرة من أمره. He says then Allah Jalla wa Ala mentions al-adud, which is plural marriage, which is polygyny. الذي أباهه من النساء, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made permissible for him to marry from the woman. مثنى وثلاثة والرباع, 2, 3, or 4. He says, أي من أحب أن يأخذ الثنتين فيفعل, meaning whoever, even Sa'di says, whoever decides or whoever prefers to take on 2, then let him marry 2 wives. If he wants to take on 3 wives, meaning the responsibilities. I want to make this clear. It's not like you can just go pick a female and say, okay, all right, I'm going to be with her, I'm going to be with her, I'm going to be with her, I'm going to be with her. There is responsibilities involved with all of this. So if you pay attention to the verse, وَإِن كِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يَعْدِلُوا, and this is where the men have to fear Allah Jalla wa Ala. You do not want to jump and become involved with any woman if you cannot establish al-adl, all right? And al-adl in Islam is very comprehensive. So it's not like you're just going to jump in and say, okay, oh, I like her, you know, she like me, and, you know, let's do what we do. It's not that. So it's not a choosing party like that, no. If you can establish the qualities that Allah, or the conditions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set upon you, then this door is open for you. Then you are the one who can practice this. All right, and there are certain key factors you have to have in order to do it. So don't just think just because you're a male and you hear this verse that it's talking about you. No, if you don't fit the criteria, you don't fulfill the conditions, then no, the verse is not talking about you. Okay, I want you to understand that, because some people, you know, I'm a man, we're allowed to have 4, but you don't have none of the conditions that the verse is talking about. So how can you have 4? How can you have 2? How can you have 3? Right? You don't have none of those conditions. All right? Yes, you might be a male, so you might think that's one condition, but no, you have to have more. All right? To establish adl. Because establishing adl, especially when it comes to the wives, is establishing their haqq. How would you establish their haqq? One of their haqqs is maintenance. All right? If you don't have the means to take on their maintenance, what's another of their haqq? Educating them, properly rearing them, cultivating them. That's another one of their haqqs. So if you don't have the means to teach them or to support them, what's another means of their haqq? Right? Another means of haqq is their time allotment. Making sure you give them the proper time they're supposed to have. What's another means of their haqq? So if you can't fulfill these things, as far as that, then this ayat isn't talking about you. So don't just take it upon yourself thinking it is. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ advised those people, as there is a verse in Surah An-Nur, that Allah talks about people who don't have the means to get married, what they're supposed to do. Right? So you definitely don't fall into this criterion if you don't have the means. Yes. No. How you gonna play outside? Nobody out there with you. I'm in class. Please, can you wait? I'm done. All right. And then he goes on. He says, I said no. No one's out there to watch you. No. I'm not out there. No. No, can you shut the door, please? I'm in class. All right, so then he says, after he mentioned that, he says this, he says, Liana aya sukiyat li biyana imtinan. All right, فلا يجوز زيادة على غير ما سمى الله تعالى إجماعا. So he talks about how it's not permissible for a man to go beyond these, the 4 that is mentioned within the verse. So you can't marry 6, you can't marry 5, you can't marry 7. I'm in class and you're really being disruptive. No. I said no. That's it. All right. So then he says, he says, وَذَلِكَ لَأَنَّ الرَّجُلَ قَدْ لَا تَنْفَعْ شَهْوَتُهُ, right? Now, he says that it's not permissible to go beyond. And then there's many narrations. I was going to bring Ibn Kathir, but Imam Sa'adi pretty much sums it up. Ibn Kathir brings all the ahadith or the different routes to establish the fact that it's not permissible that a Muslim can marry more than 4 women at one time. All right? Even though the Prophet ﷺ is different for him, but it wasn't for the believers. They are not allowed to marry more than 4 women. So he touched on that issue there. He says here, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ الرَّجُلَ قَدْ لَا تَنْدَفَعْ شَهْوَتُهُ بِالْوَاحِدَةِ. Now this is interesting that he said this, and this is the reason why I want to say this, because reading this is very interesting. He's saying that, he says that's because a man, he's not able to repel his desire by just marrying one wife, right? You might say, oh, that sounds a little bit pragmatic right there, right? You might think that might be a little pragmatic. What you mean? A man can't fulfill himself just having one woman? Yes, some men can fulfill himself and be happy, very happy, just in a monogamous relationship. No one is denying that, right? So when he says here a man can't repel his desires just with one, so it's been made permissible for him to marry one or to marry one after her and to marry another one after, up into 4, right? Up into 4, okay? He says, لأن في الأربع غنية لكل أحد إلا ما ندر ومع هذا فإنما يباه له ذلك إذا آمن على نفسه الجور والظلم ووثق بقيام بحقوقهم. And then he mentioned those components that will make this happen. So the man only can do that if he knows that he's going to be safe from oppression, safe from oppressing them, not giving them their rights, harming them, not being trustworthy and fulfilling their rights. If he knows that he can't establish their rights and so forth, then this won't be for him. Right? This individual is not the one whom Allah Jalla wa'ala is talking about. فَإِنْ خَافَ شَيْئًا مِنْ هَذَا. And he says if he fear and he knows that he don't have any of these things, in other words, fulfilling their rights, he doesn't have any of the things that he mentioned, such as the person, he know that he's not going to be able to not oppress that woman or not put her in harm's way or not cause any inconvenience to her. If he was to put her into that situation, then he should not do it. It's not for him to do it, right? أو على ملكة يمينه فإنه لا يجب عليه قسم في الملك اليمين ذلك أي اقتصار على واحدة أو ملكة يمينه أدنى على تقول على تظلم. And then he stops. Allah says that then one will be suitable for a person who doesn't have the means to fulfill the condition of being justice, because then you don't have to worry about time allotment when you're married to one woman. All right, yeah, because you're going to be with that woman, period. So it's not like you got to worry about, I got to divide my time, I got to divide this equal share here, this. You don't have to worry about none of that. And also when it comes to your slaves, you don't have to worry about any of that as well. So he's saying that, okay, Allah Jalla wa'ala saying if you can't be, tell you F1, little technical difficulties there. And then we're going to sum it up with the last one, the student of Sheikh Ibn Sa'adi. Sheikh Uthaymeen goes a little bit more deeper, right? And he mentioned some stuff that we don't know about the verse that they don't touch on. So first off the bat, we already know that this particular verse is pertaining to men, first of all, in the treatment of orphans. That's number 1. Number 2, then Allah Jalla wa'ala mentions that they are allowed to marry toward their liking the woman they like from the free women who aren't slaves up into 4. And they cannot exceed past that number, right? And we know that the asl, because Allah starts off with 2, and because Allah Jalla wa'ala mentioned a condition for only taking 1, we know that the origin, according to these particular scholars, as we're reading, is the origin is going to be 2 and it's not going to be 1. So in other words, the origin of marriage is polygyny and not monogamy. All right? So some people might argue and say, well, hold up, monogamy is permissible. Yes, polygyny is permissible. But the origin is polygyny and not monogamy, but only if you have the conditions that the Quran states. If you do not, then one will be better in your case. If not, you will be taking upon impression upon yourself and the other person or the other party that you get involved. So Shaykh Uthaymeen, he commented on this. He says, meaning that you're not able to deal justly between the orphans, called the Kanu for Jahiliyyah, and then he talks about what used to take place during the time of pre-Islamic, the days of ignorance, before the precede Islam, the events of Islam. He talks about that, how they would marry the woman without giving her any dowry, without giving her any bride money. They would marry her, leave her in suspension, not even give her toms. Any of these different things that they were doing, these are a lot of the practices that they were doing before Islam came in and put the rules and the ahkam there, and they were oppressing those women. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He laid it out clear. All right. So Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he says, Wallahu jalla wa ala murshidan ibadahu. So Allah jalla wa ala guided and directed His servants when He says, In kiftum adama adal fal babu maftur. If you know you're not going to be able to deal justice, you can't fulfill the condition of being justice and giving the rights to the orphans, then the door is open for you. Meaning, فَانْكِهُ مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Meaning, you can marry from those women who you select. فَلَيْسَ النِّسَاء مَعْدُومَاتِ لَهَؤُلَاءِ الْيَتِيمَاتِ. So he says that the women are not restricted to or numbered like these women that Allah is talking about you can marry. It's not like these other women, like the orphan women. Rather, the affair is more ample than that. فَعَدِلُوا عَنْهُنَّ وُجُوبًا فَإِذَا خَافَ أَلَّا يَعْدِلُ فِي الْيَتَامَى وَجَبَ عَلَيْهِ أَن يَعْدِلَ عنها لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى. So in other words, you can turn away from the orphan woman if you're not going to be able to treat the orphan woman right, and you can pick a woman of your choice. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, marry those whom you choose. Meaning, leave off the orphan woman and marry who you choose from the woman. So he goes into the issue about whether or not we can look at the ma here when Allah says ma tabalakum, whether we can use that to mean alladhi or men, etc. We're going to go over that. That's a grammatical point. And let's get down to this part here, tabalakum. So what do taba mean? Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he says this part of the verse, it means ma hasan or ra'aytumuhu tayyiba. Those whom you see to be good, to be beautiful, to be to your liking, those who are well, right? He says, وَطَابَتْ بِهِ نَفْسَكُمْ. Those whom you desire within yourself. Right? وَلَا تَقْرُهُ أَنفُسَكُمْ عَلَى النِّكَاحِ مَا لَا تُرِيدُونَ مَا لَا تَطْيَبُ لَكُمْ. He says, تَطَيَّبُ لَكُمْ. He says, and those whom you don't despise or dislike, all right, to marry. مَا لَا تُرِيدُونَ. From those whom you don't want, because nobody want to marry somebody they're not attracted to, all right? And whether they're physically attractive or anything, they don't want to marry someone they're not attracted to, or it doesn't please them. Right? He says, لِأَنَّ إِكْرَاهُ إِنسَانُ نَفْسَهُ عَلَى مَا لَا تَطَيِّبْ لَهُ كَإِكْرَاهُ رَجُلُ نَفْسَهُ عَلَى he says, عَلَى طَعَامٍ لَا يَشْتَهِي. He says, so a person disliking, because a person disliking for himself that which does not please him, it's like a person who dislikes a food that he doesn't partake in. He doesn't desire that food. So if the person dislikes a food, the same thing is with a woman. He's not going to want to marry that woman he don't like her. However, he says the question come up now, well, we have to tell you enough. So then how do you seek out a woman of attraction? What would be some of the areas or the qualities that you would look for to say, okay, that woman is attractive and she's appealing? All right, because sometimes when we think of attraction, we think of beauty of the eye and the beholder, but that's not all it's about. So physical attraction, yes, that's there. That's one of the means you can get married. No one said that you can't get married just off of physical attraction. You can, but that's not all the means. So it's other components you should look for too. It's other qualities that you should be looking for that brings out that beauty. All right. He says it comes in the hadith, and he brings the same hadith that Imam Sa'di brings, that the Prophet ﷺ said that you marry a woman for 4 reasons: for her wealth, for her lineage, or her position, her status, and for her beauty, and also for her deen. He says from wealth is like her profession, her employment, her position, where she's at, her service. He says, so now a woman can be married for her position, because the position that she found herself in, her service or her employment, it leads to her actually acquiring some type of wealth. He says, therefore, then a woman being pleasing to a man will be one who have one of these 4 qualities. And he says that these qualities are normally or usually the main cases why people get married, but that doesn't mean it's restricted just to them. There's other ones besides that. There are other means as well, like he said. However, these are the usual case. He says here, Allah Jalla wa Ala, by saying this, he clarified what? أَنْكُهُ الَّذِي يَطَبُ لَكُمْ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَيَجُوزُ أَنْ يَكُونَ مُتَعَلَّقًا بِأَنْكِهُ أي أَنْكِهُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ لَكِنْ أَوَّلَ أَقْرَبُ. He says here, it clarifies as to what? مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ, meaning marry that which is pleasing to you from the woman. All right? مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. All right? And then he gets into the issue about you can't marry, how some people do in the grammar. They say, well, law says mathanah. So other word, that means thin 10, thin 10. I mean, I can marry 2, and then I can marry 3, so that would bring it 5, and then I can marry 4, then that would bring it to 9. Well, yeah, but you got some people who are trying to play around. He said, no, that's not what it means. It means you can marry 2, right? Meaning 1 wife, 2 wife, 3, 4 in the actual number. Not that you can exceed and go up to 9 wives. That doesn't mean that. So he debunks that, and then he goes into the issue about why did the Prophet ﷺ marry more than one? Why was it permissible for him to marry more than 4? He talks about the different reasons for that, and then we get into the point where we at. So he says, وَلَمْ يَذْكُرُ وَاحِدًا. Allah Jalla wa Ala does not mention one wife until the end. Sheikh Uthaymeen says, لِأَنَّ مَقَامَ مَقَامَ تَغْيِيرٍ. Because when it comes to marriage, especially in this case here, if you're not able to deal equally between the orphans, then Allah Jalla wa Ala has placed it in the position of choice. So it's up to the man who fulfilled this condition to choose. All right? Allah Jalla wa Ala did not tell him to marry one woman. All right? It's up to the man to choose. Allah placed it to choose. You have an option from 2, 3, or 4. All right? You have an option up to. He says here because ومقام إعطاء النفس حظها فإذا خفت ألا تقسط في اليتامى فأمامك نساء. All right? He says, so the position here of giving yourself its portion, if you know and fear that you will not be able to deal justly between the orphans, then in front of you are the women, right? And he says, then the door is open in front of you. The door in front of you is open as to who you want to choose and select from those women. He says, and when Allah says, فَإِن كِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا, what does that mean? Meaning khashiyatum, if you fear, meaning you know, وَتَوَقَّعَتُمْ, that you will not be able to distribute justice amongst them. He says, then what it means is i'alimtum, as I said, if you know. وَالصَّوَابْ أَنَّهَا أَعْلَى مَعْنَى أَوَّلْ أَيْ خَشِيتُمْ. He said what is correct is that we can go with the first meaning, that it means if you fear. فَوَاحِدَةٍ أَيْ فَانْكِهُ وَاحِدَةٍ وَلَا تَزِيدُوا عَلَيْهَا. Meaning marry only one wife then in that case, if you know you're not going to be able to deal justice amongst the wives. All right? وَلَا تُزِيدُوا عَلَيْهَا. And do not increase more than that. I want to just, before I go and get ready to stop, want to mention this. So brothers, when you use this verse, be fair. The verse is not championing men marrying more than one woman. The verse is championing men who fulfill the conditions in order to marry one woman. You understand the difference now? It's a total big difference. So no, it's not just that all men marry more than one woman. That's not what the verse is championing. All right? I wanted just to make that clear. So you don't have to use it as a tag. I can have up to 4 wives. And I know me, I'm a man too as well. You find yourself saying it, sound fly, you can say this. But in reality, when you really look at it, do you fulfill the condition of having 4 wives? Then you can't. You can't have 4 wives. You can't have 2 wives, let alone 3 wives. You can't practice polygyny unless you have what it takes to practice polygyny. And in today's society, there are a lot of things you need to take in play in order to marry more than one wife. Now, there are some from amongst us who does have the qualities of marrying more than one woman, and they choose not to. All right? That's another issue, another topic that we can talk about, but it is their choice, okay? But marriage falls under the 5 ahkam, okay? So another time we'll talk about that. What is the 5 ahkam? How does it fall under it? Yes, it does. So it's cases and incidents where marriage will be obligatory. It's cases and incidents where marriage will be disliked. It's cases and incidents where marriage will be recommended. It's cases and incidents where marriages will be haram. And it's cases and incidents where, or circumstances where marriage will be permissible. All right, so all of those different things there, marriage falls under, okay? So if we have to understand this, there are going to be people who will be in that position. But the sisters, you don't have to keep saying, okay, it's a redundant issue. The reality is, we all say out of our mouths that Allah knows what's best for us. God knows what's best for us. I'm telling you, God got our best interests in hand. But then we contradict it with our actions when Allah legislates something that we don't want to roll with. Our action contradicts that, right? You say Allah knows best for you. Okay, Allah created man, He created woman. And He legislated for men to have more than one woman. And He placed man in a certain field, role, and He placed woman in a certain field. And the quality that He gave us to each, right? And each have to fill our position. So when you technically say out your mouth, God knows what's best for you, then accept it. Don't go against what's there. Accept it. It does not mean you don't accept polygyny because you are jealous over your husband. You're allowed to be jealous over your husband, even if you're in a polygynous situation. It doesn't mean that you go against polygyny or you don't accept the legislation if you want your husband exclusively to yourself. That's okay. You're going to feel that way. You're entitled to feel that way. There's nothing wrong as long as you don't step on the impermissible means of doing that. But notice the times. Don't you want to be in a relationship? And it's sad when you hear a lot of females say, well, I don't have to get married. That's sad because first and foremost, you need to understand Islam. Islam does not encourage you not to be married. You won't find no texts in the Quran or the Sunnah that encourage you not to be married. That's number one. Number two, celibacy is haram, okay? That's impermissible. To be celibate by choice is impermissible, okay? If you don't get married, the means that wasn't there for you, the circumstances didn't come, then you are excused from that. But if you chose by choice to say that I'm going to be celibate, I'm not going to get married or none of this and that, that's a different issue now. That's haram, all right? So the early man, we talked about that. Celibacy is haram, all right? Another issue you have to take in consideration is if, for example, you know, especially whatever area you live in or the experiences that you have, you know yourself, you know what you're exposed to, right? If you know the fitna is greater upon you, you know you want companionship, you might be lonely, not just sexual, but many different things that you might want, right? Don't close yourself off because of a bad experience that you might have and the marriage didn't work, all right? There is nothing guaranteed that once you get married to somebody that y'all going to be together to the end. That's the goal, that's the objective, but things happen. All right, and we need to learn how to process things. That's a whole nother class in and of itself, and that's the reason why we need to understand what our faith does for us. To process things. Having a bad marriage doesn't mean you're a bad person. Having a bad marriage, and a lot of women take this more to heart than the men. All right, a lot of women take this to heart more than men. It's already did a poll on this. A lot of times when you find a woman getting married and she give her all in that relationship, you don't find her hard pressed looking to get married again. All right. But men, if they go through a messed up relationship, they will give it another chance. They will have, as the more poll is there, more positive to give it another chance to get married again. But women, if they got hurt, they ain't looking to get married again. And they might deal and dibble and dabble, but it's like it's real hard pressed for them to say, let me jump up and marry another person. But then you have I'm just saying the overall majority of the different toes. Then you have females who like that. They'll get married again. But my point is I'm trying to explain is that we can't process stuff to think that is a reflection to mean that we can never come out on top or we can never have something good or something can never come. There's a lot of factors that take place when you're becoming involved with someone else. All right? There's a lot of factors. It's your faith for one. It's your understanding of that faith. It's your practice to that faith. For another, get ready to stop so I can come in. And then it's more than that. It's your education level, your communicational skills. How well do y'all comprehend one another? Your chemistry level. You understand? I'm not talking about chemistry inside the bed, because sometimes you can have amazing chemistry in the bed and then have a poor chemistry outside the bed. We know that. That's true, right? And all of the different aspects. You cannot want to be in a relationship and you don't understand compromise. You cannot want to be in a relationship and you don't want to be a part of a team. You want to be single-minded, single understanding in a relationship. That goes for the man and the woman. It's not cool. You don't want to be in a relationship like that. That's not a relationship. And we're both in it and you're saying, I'm going to do things my way and you're saying you're going to do your things your way. And we're not really in a relationship. You understand? So this is why you need the Quran and the Sunnah to be your government. That's what's going to govern y'all, and y'all going to try to fulfill your rules and to fulfill the rights of each other. All right? So sisters, polygyny is not bad. You don't have to look at it as like bad, and you don't have to keep running around talking about, well, I'm just not, I don't have to accept it, or nor do I want it. I understand that. But be technically speaking, you want to be by yourself? Or do you want to get married? Right? You want to be by yourself, you want to get married. And we're not saying that, no, you can never get married because you don't get in polygyny. That's not true. You can get married if you don't get in polygyny. But a lot of females are having a hard problem getting married right now. Right? And a lot of the good substance brothers that's out there to get married from, who might have it, might already be married. So you might have to think about it. That's something you should think about, something that your guardian should have a conversation with you with, so that you can actually think and weigh your options on that regard. Yes, a lot of people do make up and mess up these experiences, man. A lot of times, a lot of men and a lot of women, when they get into these relationships, they turn everything, they make everything sour. It's like, yo, I only want to get in a polygyny. I tried it one time and it just went real crazy. It was just sour. Yeah, a lot of people do that because that's the personality of the person, but that doesn't got nothing to do with the thing. Whatever we said that was incorrect, in any of the translations, what the early man was talking about was definitely for ourselves and the shaitan, right? Men is going to do what they're going to do. Women are going to do what they're going to do. I'd rather you hold a man responsible than you let a man walk all over you. And letting a man walk all over you, you know how you women are. If you get in love and involved with a man, you let him walk all over you because you will tolerate things that you normally wouldn't tolerate if you weren't in love with the guy, right? So now the guy got his baby mom, he's with her, or he this and that. You accept all of those things. But you can't accept the simple fact that your Lord has held you up in your honor by telling you that hold this man responsible. Make him marry you. Make him marry the other woman if that's the case. But make him be responsible. He's not going to be responsible if you're okay with him going to go see the other woman or him going to go see this other chick or the side chick. That's not cool. And it's not cool for you to have a side dude. So none of that stuff is cool. That's all wickedness and it got nothing to do with Islam. If we're doing any of that and we are Muslims, we wicked. That's wicked. You can't have a side girl or a side piece or a side man. There's none of that. You can't even have two men. Just like a man shouldn't have two women if they're not his wives. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or if they're not his slaves. And we ain't got no slaves, so you ain't got to worry about that. So if they're not his wives, he shouldn't have that. We should try to strive to do things right. All right? You like the other sister, then marry her. Marry her. There you go. And if you can't marry her right now, see if the sister can wait while you work yourself up, you build yourself up, and you say, you know what, I got this wife here, I know how to maintain her, I just bumped up and raised, I know how to take care of this, now I got enough to share with this so I can marry her. I got enough now, and now I can make it work and juggle between both, because that's what the man's supposed to do. He's supposed to know how to manage his affairs. So if you know how to get out here and get some money, you go out and get some money, you get what's right to fulfill the responsibility of both of those women, and then you can marry that woman. And being a rajul is that you go ahead and do that. That's what you're going to put forth. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to understand the deen and practice it. Whatever we said that was incorrect, it's from ourselves and from the shaitan. Whatever we said is correct is from Allah Jalla wa ala. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. This last point, I was going to do a whole talk on it. This last ending, which you just heard me said, Aisha Radha Anha said the Prophet ﷺ would say this at the end of every sitting. So if he was reading Quran, he would say the dua I just said. If he was giving a talk, he would say this dua, because there's possible that you can make mistakes when you talk. And I learned that from Sheikh Falah, rahimahullah, that he was explaining to us that once we open our mouths, we are prone to make a mistake. There's some things that we can say. There's opinions that we can take that goes against what the text can be, no matter what level we ever reach. So sometimes that can happen. So it's always good for us to safeguard each other. If you know your brother have said something or done something that goes against the deen, if you can do it in a proper way to correct that error or even speak to that person, if you can't speak to that person and it's done publicly, you have to correct it, then correct it. There's nothing wrong with you correct it, but you don't have to spear the brother, make the brother seem as if, oh, this guy is just misleading the people and so forth. You don't have to do that. You can explain where the error went at. You can bring the evidence from this. And it's important that we understand it, because that's what we got going on right now. A lot of people are there waiting for other people, and they're pouncing them. They're watching their videos. They chopping people videos, and they're looking for it. And they saying, look, see, I told you, look, this is what he said. Look, this is what he said. And they doing all this weird stuff. That's not cool. Each and every one is making mistakes. All right? Your top Sunni, Salafi, hardcore makes mistakes. If you go through the videos and you go back to the cassettes or you go back to the audio, I guarantee you're going to hear multiple mistakes that was said in that talk on it. The more we talk, the more we're going to give us mistakes. So don't look for a brother and say, okay, he gave this, he gave that. And even if the evidence is against what he said, then bring the evidence. All right? And hopefully make an excuse for him. Bring the evidence, state the evidence. Okay, scholar A, scholar B, scholar C, here go their points. They're saying this, they're saying this, they're saying that. Under no circumstances can we do this, can we do that, could we do that? And that's okay. But you don't have to make it seem as if the brother is going around intentionally or deliberately wanting to misguide the people. and not taking in consideration the audience he's talking to, not taking in consideration the West and the way that it runs. We living in challenging times, man. Real challenging times. And I'm talking about credit and riba. We're dealing in those times. And a lot of people want to get on here and they show, we do that, man. We put this fake facade on, we're around each other. Turn the music down when the brother's right there. But you got the music up when he's not there. You're engaging in this stuff when he's not there. You're going to go get the loan. You're going to go get this. You're going to go get that. But when the brothers or the sisters around, be real with yourself. Understand where you're at. Know what the pressure you can take. If you're going to rent all your life because you're going to follow the fatwas of what the ulama said, then you're going to get rewarded for that. And you're going to stick to the haqq. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bless you if that's the case. And if another brother fall weak, and the sister fall weak, and they give in to the riba, or they give in to the loan because they want a better situation, they want a better car, you understand, or they want a better house, and they want a better position where they want to be at, that's something that Allah is going to take up with them. And they seek Allah forgiveness for that. But at the end of the day, it's not something I got to spare or go around, because that's a decision that's still got to be based on that person. Each and every one of us will be judged according to our own actions. That will be based on that. But you don't have to tell a person that, oh, you can't get involved in this. I'm not going around telling everybody, okay, it's riba. No, that's the haqq. Yeah, it's riba. We know what the Prophet ﷺ said about it. We know how grave it is. But the society we live in, yes, they made it so that riba touches mostly every part of what you're talking about. I don't care what you say. You ain't reading the fine contract. Riba is touching mostly everything what you're talking about. It's touching it. Henceforth, you can't even open certain things without having good credit. I'm lying? You know I'm not lying. Come on. If they didn't want to give you nothing, you ain't got good credit. Nobody know you. What was your history report? What shows this? None of that is there. So you have to take in all that consideration. So when the brother is answering that, you have to look at, what is he looking at? He understands that this is what the society is in. So he's coming from that bab. Yes, and when I listen to the other ulama and I listen to what they're saying, it's not to say that the brother is speaking over them or not this and that. Yes, what the ulama is saying is haqq, and it's closer to the truth. And I wish that the world was like that. I do. I wish that the world was just like that. And I know that the people who stick to that, Allah is going to reward them. All right? As Allah mentioned, 3 groups of people when it comes to his book. Those who follow the up and foremost of it, those who follow the middle of it, and those who oppress them own selves. All right? And each of them are a believer. Allah mentioned that each of them are a believer. Those who fall short in following it, those who follow it in the middle course, and those who are foremost in it. But they all 3 are a believer. Do you understand? You have to understand that. So this campaign that they doing against Mufti and all of that, oh, the brothers misleading people with fatwa and so forth and so on, you have to think big. It ain't just about that. It's not just about that. Yes, the ayats and the evidence is strong. And when you listen to it, it's clear. Mufti could have made an error in that. But then also understanding where Mufti is coming from at the end of the day. And if he made an error, he made an error. And we ask Allah to forgive him. We ask him to correct it. If we can get to him to ask him to correct it. But at the end of the day, we don't have to go around and make a smear campaign and make it seem as if the brother going around misleading people, because that's not the case. I just wanted to get that up because the Prophet ﷺ taught us something. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. And he was the Prophet. He was the Prophet ﷺ. And he made this dua as an expiation, he told Aisha. This is an expiation for whatever was said or done